Welcome to the great conversation on the evening show with Jackie Brambles. This is where we spend a warm and wonderful hour nattering with some of your favourite artists of the 70s, 80s and 90s and track a lifetime of musical influences through their most meaningful musical memories. Tonight, we're joined by one of the most highly regarded keyboardists in the biz. He's been a part of Eric Clapton's band. He's been Tina Turner's musical director. And he's worked with the biggest and the best. But his main gig was tinkling the ivories for a band you may be a tad familiar with, the legendary Dire Straits. Alan Clark, thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Now, you're on a massive world tour at the moment. You just finished up a load of dates in Brazil, heading off to Europe in a couple of weeks' time. The American leg starts in September, then back again to Italy to finish up the latter part of the year. The band, of course, you're on tour with is called Dire Straits Legacy. So let's explain for clarity to our listeners exactly what that is. Is it sort of everybody from the original Dire Straits except Mark Knopfler?
Kind of, not quite everybody, but I would think probably about 80% of them, yeah.
And I would think it's legal reasons it's called Legacy.
Oh yeah, we can't call it Dire Straits. The name Dire Straits is owned by Mark Knopfler, I think. Yeah, in that respect, you know.
So he wants to live a quiet life, and you guys are not ready to put down your rock star life yet.
Well, that's about it, really. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Nailed it. Thanks very much for joining us. And so who's doing the singing?
We have this Italian guy, which it all began when I was invited to by an Italian person who is a Mark Knopfler sort of or Dire Straits, a huge Dire Straits fan, fine guitar player, and he invited myself and John Ilsley to perform Dire Straits tunes on top of a ski mountain in northern Italy in December. This is about 10 or so years ago.
Oh, right.
So John Ilsley and I thought, well, this is a wacky scheme. And seeing as we hadn't played Dire Straits for about 20 years or so, we thought, well, let's give it a try. And we had a great time. And then we did another couple of gigs, and then other people from Dire Straits were attracted to the scheme, and one thing led to another, and here we are, fast forward to now, and we've just come back from Brazil, and we've got et cetera.
Wow, and obviously it's just something you still love to do, is to be out there performing for people. Do you still manage? Is it still thrilling when you step on that stage and the lights go down and the applause comes up? Do you still get that same thrill?
Yeah, the thrill is just the same as it ever was. In fact, maybe it's even more so now, because I mean, back in the day with Dire Straits, we did so many gigs in front of such huge crowds that I used to walk on stage and think, I should be more excited than I am about this.
Yeah.
Because the audience certainly are. But you just kind of get used to it. It's kind of like walking into your living room after a while, walking in front of 30,000 people.
That's so
it's bizarre, really. So I kind of, after 30 years or so of not doing that,
yeah,
it's kind of nice to revisit it.
Other sort of exceedingly interesting experiences that you've had via sort of the Dire Straits career and experience was, like working with Bob Dylan. Can you tell us a little bit about how that came about?
Yeah, I mean, Mark had played on a previous Bob Dylan album, Blood on the Tracks, I think.
Right.
I think it was that one. And then Mark was invited to produce Bob's Infidels album.
Right.
And so Mark invited me on the album, and that was it, basically. And which was a great experience for me, because I'd just a few years before that, I remember lying on my living room floor listening to the Infidels album endlessly, night after night, and slightly reading the liner notes and stuff. So the first time I heard Bob's voice in the headphones as we were recording the first song was, I remember the moment to this day. It was quite a nice thing.
Quite surreal.
Bob and I got on really well, actually. I really enjoyed him, and yeah, he's got a lovely smile, and he's quite a good pool player, although I admit to letting him win.
Oh, did you?
Standing on the water, casting your bread, while the eyes of the idol with the
Bob Dylan with Joker Man from the Infidels album, with our special guest Alan Clark of Dire Straits on the keyboards. Alan, sometimes when we have a guest like your good self, whose career really just cannot be squeezed into an hour of chat with any kind of justice, I get you to lay out musical lily pads that we can leapfrog across the years with. So can I ask you to pick 3 Dire Straits tracks that would represent sort of the beginning-ish, the middle-ish, and towards the end-ish of that era, and just tell us why you're picking those particular tracks, what memories might be attached or significance they might have for you. If you can start off with the beginning-ish one.
Probably, my favourite Dire Straits track, if I have to pick one, would be Private Investigations, which is on the Love Over Gold album, which is the first studio album I recorded with Dire Straits.
Mine too. That's exactly my absolute favourite one as well. Why do you love it? You tell me the behind-the-scenes reason. It's
just a great tune. The chord structure is superb. The words are amazing. The words, actually, not many people know this until now. Mark told me at the time that the song is actually about the process of writing a song. So if you figure out Mark sitting there sort of in the middle of the night, sort of with a pen and paper, and he's writing a song, and the whole. So if you interpret the words of the song sounds as though it's from it's the words of a private investigator.
Yeah.
But in fact, the private investigation is in Mark's own mind, coming up with the concept of the song.
Sort of looking internally at what's going on, and that becomes the song.
Exactly, and it also it's quite a piano orientated. The whole thing is based around my piano part, which is so it's kind of a nice song to play for me, and it's really good.
The game commences.
Private Investigations got to number 2 in 1982 from the excellent album Love Over Gold. It's Alan's favourite Dire Straits track from earlier days, and we'll be back with more from Alan Clark as we continue our great conversation on Greatest Hits Radio. Welcome back to our great conversation on the evening show with Jackie Brambles, where we are taking a meander through the musical memories of our special guest, who's always one of your favourite artists of the 70s, 80s and 90s. Tonight, our guest is Dire Straits keyboardist Alan Clark. So, Alan, well within the time constraints that we're under, we're sort of skimming through the vast Dire Straits discography. So, chunking it up into beginning, middle and end kind of vibe. So let's talk about a favourite track of yours from the middle years.
So middle period has to be Money for Nothing, which was a great hit. And interestingly, I had a fair bit to do with the entire concept of the intro for Money Nothing, the I Want My MTV intro.
Yeah.
Was actually my idea.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When we got to the rehearsals, the song began with the famous guitar riff, which was a bit different back then, but it evolved over the next few weeks or months into the iconic guitar riff, which it is now. But yeah, so there was no intro, and in a break in the rehearsals, I nipped off and just sat at my keyboards, and I just had this idea, this concept. MTV had originally used the soundbite "I Want My MTV" in their very early days when they first started.
Right.
But by 1985, they pretty much dropped it, I think. But I revived it, and I just came up with the whole concept, the first couple of chords, and the idea of, I was actually singing, "I want my MTV, I want my MTV." So that was the original concept.
How amazing! And then how did it come that Sting appeared singing that on the track?
Well, that day, so I presented the track to Mark and then the rest of the band, and by the end of that day, pretty much the intro as you know it now was conceived, and we'd pared down my melody to the first 3 notes.
Yeah. And
then afterwards realised that it was we'd pretty much copied Sting's "Don't Stand So Close to Me," and then by pure coincidence, Sting was on holiday on the island of Montserrat where we recorded the album. It was Montserrat,
right? And
so it was logical that we invited Sting up to the studio, and for dinner and then said, "Hey, do you fancy singing this?" And that was it, basically.
What a rock and roll story. We just happened to be in the same Caribbean island as Sting.
Yeah, well, Sting had recorded there before with the Police and found that it was one of the few places on this earth where he can wander around and nobody... They're completely unfazed by rock stars there.
Oh, and what do you learn when you sort of collaborate with other artists? I mean, I can imagine, perhaps we don't hear about it on our side of the street, but sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes that stuff won't get released, I imagine. We are only sort of seeing the successful collaborations.
That's true, yeah. I mean, I can think of one occasion when it didn't work out. I'm not going to tell you who it was with.
Okay, that's all right. You can tell us the story, but don't tell us who it was with.
Well, it's just sometimes the chemistry is wrong, and just everything is wrong, basically. But the vast majority, in fact, every other time, I can't think of any other occasion when it hasn't worked out, actually, so... And
I suppose people have their different processes, and people get up at different times of day and want to keep working for, various lengths of time. Some people want to never leave the studio. Some people, need their breaks, and it's got to work on every level, really, hasn't it?
Yeah, I suppose so, yeah. But, I mean, it's just a question of bringing, I just bring what I've got to the table, and it usually works, basically. I'm happy to say. Well, it obviously worked with the late, great, legendary Tina Turner, because didn't she end up making you her musical director? She did, actually, yeah. I was sitting at the piano going through with the band the arrangement of Private Dancer, which, of course, we recorded with Dire Straits previous to that. And so I knew that, and we were well into the arrangement of the song. So and Tina walked in, and with that lovely smile and everything, and that was my introduction to Tina, and we got on famously. And she invited me to tour with her on her US tour, which was to promote the Private Dancer album. The album became known as Private Dancer. Yeah. And the tour was supporting Lionel Richie on a 6-week tour, I think it was, of the US. So I went with her as her keyboard player, and during that tour, the album went to #1 in just about every country around the world, and including the US. So it was a fantastic time to be with Tina. The party that night, I have to tell you, was memorable if we could remember it. It was in a Mexican restaurant in San Antonio. Right. And I remember trays of tequila arriving, tequila shots, and that's pretty much the last memory we had. Well, the men come in these places, and the men are... Well, as you said, such a special time to be with her, because it was her... It was sort of her, her comeback story, wasn't it? She was the comeback kid, and she was being recognised and being respected at the level that she always should have been, and making it on her own. And how amazing that it was that song that sort of brought you two together. Because, as you said, as I understand it, it was just originally written for the band, for Dire Straits, but was there some decision made that it would be better to be sung by a female, or was Tina Turner always the person that was had in mind? Well, that was always the issue. I mean, it's a great song, and it was going to be... We recorded it with the Love Over Gold tracks. Right. But it was kind of strange when Mark put the vocal down, because it's obviously coming from a female point of view. So I guess the decision was, we can't really do it. And then Tina Turner picked it up, and that was great. What was particularly good, though, was one of the mind-blowing tracks of mine from my youth was River Deep Mountain High. I mean, the first time I heard that track, I thought it was from the moon or Mars or somewhere. It was just the most mind-blowing track at the time. Yeah, that's one of those lovely full circle moments that we talk about quite a lot on this show, where, as you said, as a kid,
that song blew you away. Would you have ever imagined, all those years later, that you're on tour with her when she's gone to number one? And wow, how amazing! Yeah. Any others that strike you when you sort of, because as you said, you probably walked a very fine line between, as walking on stage in front of 20,000 people, as you said, like walking into your living room, because it becomes the norm, it becomes the everyday. You can't maintain that level of...
Well, the amazing thing about all of this is that all of these people are just human beings at the end of the day, human beings who have extraordinary talent.
Yeah.
But besides the extraordinary talent, they're just human beings like everyone else. One day, Eric Clapton called me up and said, "Would you like to join my band?" I mean, that was kind of nice as well.
I would imagine it would be. Did you say yes?
Yeah, it took me about 2 seconds to say yes.
Bad Love, Eric Clapton from the Journeyman album, featuring an incredible bunch of musicians, including tonight's special guest, best known as the keyboardist for Dire Straits, but he spent a good few years with Eric Clapton, as we heard earlier, also with the legend that was Tina Turner. And we'll be back to talk about his memories of Live Aid as our great conversation continues next. Welcome back to the Great Conversation on the Evening Show with Jackie Brambles, where we're having a fascinating chat with Alan Clark, keyboardist with Dire Straits, and still doing that as part of Dire Straits Legacy. He's worked closely with Tina Turner as her musical director, was part of what was arguably, I'd say, the best Eric Clapton band he ever assembled for the Journeyman years. And we can't not talk about one of the most legendary gigs of all time, Alan, that you played at, which was Live Aid, of course, in 1985. Dire Straits did their set between U2 and Queen. What are your recollections of that, Alan? What's your story of the day?
My story of the day is I woke up in an apartment in Bayswater, and Dire Straits was actually in a run of, I think, 12 shows at the Wembley Arena, which is the building
next door. Yeah.
Next door, yeah. So I'd had a bit of a late night the night before, so I woke up, put the TV on, and Live Aid was just starting to kick in on TV. So I ate breakfast. It was a lovely sunny day.
Yeah.
Ate breakfast on the balcony, watching the TV. And watching Live Aid, knowing that I was going to be on that stage at 6 o'clock that afternoon. So I allowed myself a good couple of hours to drive up to Wembley, which was a mistake, actually, because there was nobody on the road because they were already in the stadium. So the roads were pretty much clear. As I was driving up there, we'd arranged to meet at 1 o'clock and have lunch at the arena,
right?
And then walk across to the stadium, because we were playing the arena that night also.
Wow!
So basically, we went on stage at 6, played for 40 minutes, came off, walked straight across with a police escort across the car park as Queen were just starting to kick in.
Oh.
And so we could hear Queen in the background. We went into the arena, had dinner, and then went on stage at 8:30 and played for 2 hours, 20 minutes there.
I paid my dues, time after time, on the wall.
And again, you've played so many concerts. Was it a particularly memorable day for the atmosphere there, and because there was such an urgency about it, wasn't there? And there was such a mission that Bob Geldof had sort of pulled everybody into. Did it have a different feel that day?
It was extraordinary. I mean, I've never experienced anything like it, really. I mean, it was huge. It was as big as you could get, really. Besides the fact there were was it 100,000 or 80,000 in this Wembley Stadium? There were millions and millions of people watching it around the world, which is so that's a big audience.
Yeah, I'll say. Right, well, with one eye on the clock, I do want to quickly squeeze in a mention of your working relationship with Trevor Horn, musician and legendary producer. He is the bassist in Dire Straits Legacy, of course, but you've worked together quite a bit.
Yeah, Trevor and I actually play on all sorts of projects, recording projects with him, so yeah.
So go on then, pick a favourite Trevor Horn produced track for us.
It's got to be Owner of a Lonely Heart by Yes.
And final question then, we're nearly out of time, is the one that we ask all our musicians that we have on, is it's either, if you've got one, a favourite track of all time, or a favourite of the moment, or one that you might sort of revisit quite often because it always does the job to inspire or uplift or comfort or whatever it might be.
The greatest song ever written has got to be Imagine by John Lennon.
Oh, yeah, what a perfect choice. What a perfect choice. And as a songwriter yourself, do you sort of keep things like that in mind when you're trying to create, or can you never sort of compare yourself to others?
I think trying to copy or anything like that is a mistake. So I just try to dig deep, and whatever comes out is it, basically.
Imagine there's no heaven, and the world will live as one.
Alan, what a pleasure it's been to meander through your musical memories.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Cheers, Alan. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Alan Clark, what a fabulously colourful and rich life in the music industry he's had and continues to have.